atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love, surrender. You're the reason we came to encounter your love, surrender. Atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord
to the bone. They're sweet to my soul, and I'm swept away. Rushing through your veins, warm and devoted, tenderness filled with strength, and you heal to the bone. You speak life to the soul, and I'm swept away.
Inside the darkness, a place where my heart is scared. You call me there. promise you wanted me to know you're here. In the unknown, I've never known so much. In this mystery, where fear is taught to love. Oh, hear my wonder, can't wander away. In my restless heart, can rest inside your grace. Where my heart is, to out beyond the stars, and teach my heart to love beyond my comfort, from a place where we once were to wherever you may fall. Oh, in the unknown, I've never known so much. In this mystery, where fear is taught to love. Oh, hear my wonder, can't wander away. Oh, in my restless heart, can rest inside your grace. Lift it up, 'cause you're the light in the darkness, a hope for all the world to see, the dark that enlightens, a God of boundless mystery, a voice in the silence, revealing where your heart is. You're the arms that hold me, my solace, my sanity. You're the light in the darkness, a hope for all the world to see, the dark that enlightens, a God of boundless mystery, a voice in the silence, revealing where your heart is. You're the arms that hold me, my silence, my sanity.
strong and I've been broken within a moment. I've been faithful and I've been reckless at every bit. I've held everything together and watched the shatter. I've stood tall and I have crumbled in the same breath. I have wrestled and I have trembled towards surrender. Chased my heart adrift and drifted home again. Plundered blessings till I've been desperate to find redemption. And every time I turn around, Lord, you're still there. I was found. Come on, sing this out. I was found before I was lost. I was yours before I was not. Grace to spare for all my mistakes, and that what just wrecks me. And I know I don't deserve this kind of love, but somehow this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I can never add up to be somebody you so want. But somehow you love me as you find. I can never add up to be somebody you so want, but somehow you love me as you find me. You love me as you find me. Oh, you love me as you find me. Sure give him one more shout of praise this morning. Come on. Come on, Circles, let me hear you. That's right. Thank y'all so much for singing with us. You may be seated.
Good morning. It's good to see you today. Thank you so much for being here. Let me remind you some things that are happening in the life of church. You got some papers when you came in. Just a few things. One is a communion served immediately following the service today. So if you're interested in that. Also, you see a brochure about practical parenting. If you'd like to look at that, that's coming up again just in a couple of weeks. And one other thing, you have a brochure in your hand about the 20-year commemoration. It's on Saturday, September 11th. This is at the Patriot Plaza at Sarasota National Cemetery. You can read about that. That's from 6 to 7:30 next week. So lastly, I want to remind you that next weekend, we have on stage with us Brian Mclaren. So I'll be sitting with Brian Mclaren. If you don't know who Brian Mclaren is, he's a world-renowned author. His books are out. Probably one of the most well-known Christian authors in our country. So if you want to hear that, he has some great things to say. And I really love Brian because he's kind of in sync with who we are. He understands who we are, and he writes about churches like ours that cannot be found other places. So I thought, well, this guy is so familiar with who we are, let's have him again. He's been here before. I've gotten to be a good friend with him, so you'll enjoy that. That's next weekend. But today, I have with me another friend, a long-term friend. This is Pete Abbott. So let me... some of it, we're not to be confused with Peter Abbott.
Thank you.
But Pete has been a friend of mine for a long time, and we're going to talk today about, because the 9/11 thing is happening this week. You're going to hear a lot about it in the news. You're also going to see a lot of it on the weekend if you come to that commemoration out at the National Cemetery. But to start off our week, I thought we'd talk to someone who knows about this. But before I do that, I want to get some more personal information about you. So tell me about your history. Where did you grow up?
I grew up I was born in Queens, New York, and I grew up on Long Island, a town called Mineola.
It's not a southern accent, is it? No, not at all. So, but Long Island, and what schools did you go to? Tell me about the schools on Long Island.
I went to Mineola High School, very original, right? And then I went to Hofstra University, and when I came down here, I went to USF for my master's.
University of South Florida.
South Florida, sorry.
That's right.
It's not good. FSU.
That's right. And he's a bull, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, you'll believe that in a minute. So, and I tease Pete a lot because we've been friends a long time. But where you grew up, I'm a Nashville native. He's from Long Island.
Two people separated by a common language. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, the real English versus the Northern English. Depends on your perspective. You know, it's amazing. When I go to New York, I have an accent, but if you come to Nashville, you have an accent. So it's all about where you grew up. So tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me about, what's the name of your wife?
I grew up in a family of 6 kids. My mom stayed home. My dad, he worked in electrical tech stuff and then pollution control. And eventually, when I was older and got out of high school, he became an air traffic controller. And I went to Hofstra, graduated, didn't want to sit behind a desk, so I joined with the NYPD, which did not make my mother very happy, right? But it was exciting. It was never a dull moment. It was like a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. So.
And then you got married to whom?
I got married to Marcy, who's here today. She's out there with my daughter. And prayers for my daughter, a tree fell on her house. She lives in New Orleans. So she's been with me for a week and trying to work through that. but they came today, so I'm really happy about that. They're out there somewhere. Can't see.
So Ashley's here with her husband. And where are you guys? Raise your hand. He's trying to spot
Oh, there
you.
they are. With my son-in-law David, in the back.
That's right. So it's nice to have your family here, and you have a son as well, right?
I do. My son Travis happens to be in Florida too. He's in a wedding today up in Tampa, so he lives in Denver. So they're scattered pretty far and wide.
So when the storm was coming to New Orleans, how did it happen that your daughter ended here? Who initiated that call?
That would be me. She was thinking about staying. I said, look, this thing is spinning up pretty hard. Why don't you just get in the car and come here? And I said, bring your friends, do whatever you got to do. So she brought her girlfriend, she brought David, she brought 3 dogs. But luckily, because the tree fell through the roof and into the kitchen, and there's a branch sticking through, and it rained in the house for like 24 hours. It's kind of a mess, but nobody got hurt, so it's just stuff. So
when they anticipate the power coming back on there?
They might get it today. They thought they had it, but they didn't. But maybe today, maybe tomorrow, depending upon it's moving around the different neighborhoods.
So we Florida people, we understand about the storms, don't we? Yeah. And we're glad you're here, Ashley and Dave. We're glad that you've got a great family to come to. And
Marcy's out there too.
And Marcy, and it's always good to see Marcy. So tell me about your career path. I know you went to school and you started at NYPD. How old were you, and how'd that go?
I was 24 when I started with them, and I started on the street in Brownsville, Ocean Hill, which is 7-3 precinct in Brooklyn North. After that, they were hiring big classes to make up for the layoffs, so they brought me back. Anybody with a degree got automatically made an academy instructor for a year, so I did that for a while. Then I made sergeant, and I was in the ceremonial unit for a couple of years. Then I made lieutenant. I went out to the 115 precinct, which is Jackson Heights. Then made captain and went back into Manhattan on the Lower East Side. Then I made deputy inspector, and I was in charge of the administrative services division. Then made full inspector. It's one step below chief. I was the executive officer for the first deputy commissioner. So the number 2 to the number 2.
Number 2 to the number 2. So have you ever ridden one of those horses in New York?
Oh yeah, I was in the mounted unit for a while too. We were talking about this before. I actually did the Millennium on horseback in Times Square with 105 other horses, and I was a commanding officer of the mounted unit, and it was a pretty interesting job.
So you're a pretty tall guy, 6'3"?
6'4".
6'4". And how was your horse small, or was it a big horse?
No, my horse was like over 17 hands. He was gigantic. We used to call him the Terminator, Richie Rich. He was ripped. He was big. I was about 10 feet high when I got up on top of him. Yeah.
So you got a big horse with a big guy on top of the horse. It's kind of intimidating.
Not for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry.
Let's talk about, let's shift gears a little bit. Let me also say, Pete and I have been friends a long time. And
we joke.
And there's a lot of joking, and that goes on. And I want to always be kind and polite to people on stage, but off stage, men banter goes back and forth. But we're just good friends. But on the morning of 9/11, tell me that morning you woke up, and what was your routine about that day?
Normally, my shift was, I worked on top floor police headquarters, and my shift would normally be 10 to 6, but because I lived on Long Island and you always wanted to be in early, I usually got in about 6 o'clock in the morning and worked till about 6, 7 at night. But that day, my neighbor, Gary Shapiro, who was a sergeant with the Nassau County Hate Crimes Unit, he had a meeting with the FBI at 26 Federal Plaza, so he said, hey, can I jump in with you? So I said, sure. So we drove into Manhattan and got into my office. We took a walk out to Park Row, which is about halfway between, 2 blocks, about halfway to the World Trade Center. Got some bagels and coffee, came back to the office, and about 8:45, 8:50, there was a big commotion on the police commissioner's side. Our 2 complexes were separated by the door. The door was always open until the police commissioner came in. It was early in the morning. So I ran over to see what was going on, because usually very quiet over there. And I saw them all pressed up against the window. You could see the smoke from the tower pouring out of the building. And we tried to get some information. It was hard to get. So I just said, look, I'm just going to grab my stuff. I'll go over there, because it was only a few blocks, so I just had to walk through City Hall Park and Municipal Plaza and across Broadway, and I was at Vesey Street in Church, and that's where the Trade Center is.
So you saw the commotion, you saw the smoke, and you went there. And when you got, how far were you from there when the first building fell?
Just short of Vesey and Church. Well, the first building hadn't fallen, but I was just short of Church and Vesey when the second plane hit. So I don't know if you've seen it, hit lower than the first plane, so it was a big explosion of fuel that was on fire. And when I got there, the first thing I saw was a shoe with just a shoe with an ankle in it, with nobody else attached to it, laying up against the curb. And then we also knew at that point that this was not accidental. You know, this was go time. So we started doing our thing.
So at what point did you see the building fall? Did you see the first building fall?
No, I was inside 75 Barclay. When we first got there, there was a lot of people responding. Emergency service trucks were responding. So I was there. My boss, who was the first deputy commissioner, he came from a different way. He had a security detail that he traveled with. It was Manny Lopez and Dennis Sheehan and Eric Dixon. And we ran into each other at Vesey and Church, just happened to be. And we saw a bunch of the emergency service trucks roll up, so we started helping to put the gear on Scott packs and ropes and gear and stuff like that. And we put the gear on Rodney Gillis and Paul Talty and John Coughlin and Tommy Langone. And, you know, for us, it was just what we were used to. So I said, all right, just be careful. And they headed into the building. And at that point, we knew that there were two other planes that were off course, and their transponders were turned out, and they weren't communicating. One of them shortly went into the Pentagon. The other one went into the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But as we were standing in this intersection, we were there with the mayor, the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of the FBI, the head of the Secret Service, a bunch of us just, you know, strategizing. So I said, you know, this is probably not the best place to be because we didn't know where the chief of department was. And so why don't we just go into this building over here, which is 75 Barclay. It was a corner building about a half block up, and it had an angled entry. So we got in there and we started getting on the phones, you know, shutting down the roads, the bridges, the tunnels, the railroads, the subways. I had gotten on the radio before we even got there, and I called Central Dispatch, and XO First Step, get dibs on every plane in the sky. You know, my father had been an FAA controller. I knew that they could contact them, but they couldn't communicate with two of them, and those were the ones that ended up elsewhere. But there were still a lot of planes in the sky because we have Newark and JFK and LaGuardia all surrounding that lower end of Manhattan. So we didn't know when the next one was coming, so we had them evacuate the UN and Empire State Building, all the non-essential personnel out of headquarters, City Hall, things like that. But as we were in Barclay doing this, and the mayor was on the phone with the vice president trying to get air support. It was kind of really out-of-body experience, air support, military air support for the skies over Manhattan. People calling the governor, we were calling the National Guard, just everybody's doing their jobs, trying to get stuff done. And Dennis Sheehan came running in the door because he had been standing outside and says, get down, it's coming down. And the first building came down right across the street. And the door where we came in was now covered with debris and smoke and everything else, so we couldn't go out that way. So there was a janitor in the building. He had some dust masks. I think he was doing some maintenance work. And so he grabbed us all, gave us all a mask. He took us downstairs. We were never found this owner. He took us downstairs, through and back up into another building up in front. We were able to get out one block north. They took the police commissioner and the mayor up to the police academy, which is up on 20th Street, out of the hot zone, they call it. But I knew I still had a couple of folks that were still down in there. I was worried about Lieutenant Like and Lieutenant Cassidy. So we all, my boss, Manny, Dennis, and Eric, we all headed back in toward the building. And then we saw Tommy Patel. He had just survived the first building falling. He was the chief of the Special Operations Division. He was in charge of all the emergency service cops in the city. And we were friends. We had known each other for a long time. So we said, look, do me a favor, because my boss had ripped his Achilles tendon on July 4th at a volleyball game, a command volleyball game. So he had a cast from his hip to his ankle, and he really couldn't get around very well. And his car was crushed when the first building fell. So it was like, come on, do me a favor, just triage everybody and get the folks that are coming out of the building that's remaining over towards City Hall Park. We'll queue up the ambulances and try to get some workflow done here. I said, okay, great. So we're in the corner of Vesey and Church, and we're getting, calls from aviation that the building is starting to, lean a little bit. And a van backed into the street where we were trying to take out a lieutenant who was injured, but they were able to get him to an ambulance. So Manny and I said, look, we got to get the boss out of here because we don't know who else is left to run this place. And so disobeying direct orders, we pushed him into the van, and it turned out to be a bomb squad van, had a robot in the back, and we just hit the sliding door, and the four of us jumped in the back, and we pushed him in the front. And Kevin Barry, I found out, was the driver, and I said, look, we went through this before, but I don't curse, but I just said, Kevin, step on the fill in the blank gas, right? And he did. And as he's as we're heading up Church Street, the building starts to come down behind us, the second building. And he makes a right about 2 blocks up, but I still knew I had Like and Cassidy were probably still out there, so I didn't know. So I said, stop, stop, stop. So I grabbed Eric Dixon, who was not happy. And I said, look, take the boss to headquarters, get him out of here. So we started heading back. As soon as we turned around, this big wall of smoke about, 6 stories tall, just black and gray, just came right down the block at us. So I grabbed the door and opened it. We dove in. It was a bank for it that happened to be open. So we were able to not suck in all of that debris. We waited about 2 or 3 minutes, and you could finally start to see daylight a little bit. So we headed back out and started helping people, and went down to City Hall, which had been evacuated just half a block away. And I knew at that point, based upon what I had seen and the stuff that everything fell down, if it was nobody coming out of that building. I know we tried for 10 days, but it was just so much debris coming down so fast. When the buildings came down, they cut the power and the digital and the phone lines through all of southern Manhattan. It was just a mess. And so I picked up a phone at headquarters, but that's on the Chinatown grid. I got a dial tone, so I dialed my office extension because it's a city of New York. It's all together, so you only had to dial 3-digit extension. Somebody picked up there, and I told him, look, I'm here. I still don't know where Like and Cassidy are. He told me, no, we accounted for them. That's good. So I was really relieved. I was with Gary McCarthy, who later turned out to be the Newark and Chicago superintendent. We had gone up through the job together. And I said, do me a favor, try to get through to my wife, because she's going to be freaking out when she's watching this. And they said they would, and they did. And you find out who your friends are, because I had about 50 voice messages on my phone at home, right?
Right.
Is he okay? Is he okay? Because a lot of people knew I was on the job. And that began, and I was able to, they assigned me to the situation room in command and control, because the command and control for the city was in 45 World Trade Center, which was on fire, and later on that day it collapsed. So they had to move the command control center to headquarters, and they put me in the situation room with the FBI and the military and some folks from our job and some folks from the mayor's office, and we just try to coordinate airplane coverage, bridge closings, tunnel checks, getting lighting in, because all the power in lower Manhattan went out. So we wanted to get some stuff, so we called all the volunteer fire departments upstate and on Long Island, brought them in with the light trucks. So we had some light to work with and whatever generators. But we only had 3, people knew this, we only had 3 working phone lines in headquarters. We were actually feeding heavy cables out to go into the Chinatown grid. And there was a lot going on, to say the least. And, we had to give reports. And as soon as we said it on this side, the mayor or police commissioner would say it on the national news for the briefings, things like that. It was real time. I remember making a note in my, I was keeping a log just so there were so many things coming at me. I knew I'd forget them if I didn't write them down. And the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, at 210 said the air quality was okay, which didn't work out so good.
Yeah. So did you lose friends that day? And if you did, tell me some of the people that you lost.
I did. The guys that we put the gear on, Tommy and Paul and John and Rodney, they all perished that day. The one guy who went down to retire, John Perry, he was in the retirement section when the buildings, he went out, he died. Since then, I've lost a lot of friends to Barry Galfano, who I went to the Police Management Institute with up at Columbia with Gary McCarthy. He passed not that long after from cancer. Bill Ali, who I was his XO in the 7th Precinct when I made captain. He was chief of detectives. He was assigned to the landfill to do the investigations, and he died from the inhalation of all that stuff. Jackie McCarthy and Sixto Almonte, I went to the academy with him. Just a lot.
Just a lot of people that you knew. But a lot of the loss of life subsequent to the building's fall was due to the inhalation of the fumes and the stuff. And did you ever think about that for you?
I thought about it. They said, sign up in case something happens, and I did, but I've been blessed. I think it's because, A, I was in that first building when it fell down, so I didn't have to just breathe in all that smoke and mercury and asbestos and everything else. And then the second time, we were able to dive into that building. The whole day was, if you went left, you lived, and if you went right, you died. It was just that simple. And for whatever reason, I'm here. I'm blessed to be here.
And even in recent years, you've lost friends from the cancer that's caused by
the guy I was with, Gary Shapiro, that I brought in to work that day, he suffered from stuff, and he's been recovering. One of the deputy commissioners that I worked with, he died from it, Tommy Deppner. And Tommy Deppner's daughter is now engaged to Gary Shapiro's son. I'm going to that wedding in October. Good friend of mine, Mark Schmidt, we had gotten a call that we didn't realize was bogus when I was in the Situation Room. The lady said that we just got a cell phone call from cops that had trapped underneath the rubble. So, we jumped on that right away. So Mark Schmidt, who was in Technical Assistance and Response Unit, he's a friend of mine that I knew for many years. We dropped him into this thing that was still burned for 100 days, but it was into this smoke and debris in the area they thought she was talking about, and they were using listening devices and everything else. But they couldn't find it. It turned out to be a bogus call, and she got locked up. But Mark is still suffering from the throat and colon and intestines and all sorts of issues that he's got.
So after that, how long till you retired from Manhattan?
I retired about a year later. The new mayor came in, and I just felt like I went out on top. I really felt proud about being a police officer. And they asked me if I would take the job down in Sarasota as the chief of police, and I did. And I did that for almost 8 years after that.
So you went from Manhattan to the city of Sarasota, where you were hired to be the chief of police for almost 8 years.
Yeah.
So did you ever pull over anyone here for speeding?
I said the first one. I tried to pull Larry over once, but I couldn't catch him.
He's been tried ever since. So as the chief of police in Sarasota, that was your job, and you managed that for a while. And then after that, what do you do now?
I take care of people's finances, retirement, school, college plans, tax. I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones.
So from a police officer in New York to the city of police here, the city of Sarasota here, to Edward Jones as a financial officer. So when did you begin to attend Suncoast?
I came down to Florida right at the end of 2002, and I started here in August, I think it was July of 2003. I just heard I had a great family, nice home, good job, but I felt like something was a gap there, so I started going after church, and I've tried a few places, but I tried this when it was over at Sarasota Middle School, where my kids went eventually. They were building up the lunchroom on Sundays, and I've been here ever since, so sorry.
So it's our pleasure. So tell me about your other civil involvements here. Do you serve on any of the boards?
I do. I'm the chairman of the Pines of Sarasota, which is, they take care of assisted living and skilled nursing for folks that are older. I was the chair of the First Step of Sarasota, which deals with alcohol and drug abuse rehab. I'm on the board at the Sarasota Sheriff's Charitable Foundation that, folks get cancer or get in trouble, and they need help, we help them out. I serve on the Sheriff's Activities League. I'm on the Fair Board. which nobody can ever figure out. This guy from the city was on the fair board with the agricultural stuff. And I was also past president of the Kiwanis Foundation.
So how long have you attended you're part of the Thursday morning men's group,
I am.
which meets at 6:30 on Thursday morning. How long have you been a part of that?
I'm thinking about 15 years, maybe. It's been a while. I mean, you know.
So you do a variety of things here, though, don't you, besides that?
I greet, usually. My wife thought I was greeting today. I said, no, I'm actually speaking today.
Yeah.
And I change oil once a month. And, you know, whatever needs.
So you don't wash cars?
I don't wash cars.
See,
That's for guys like Bruce. Bruce washes cars.
Yeah. So some of us are part of the elite group that actually
we
work.
turn the screws.
Yeah. They do the oil change. I do the photo ops. It's kind of a perfect scenario.
Truth.
So every now and then I don't want to be too smart over there or they get my shirt dirty. So, but if you were to give someone regarding life, what advice would you give someone who's lost a loved one?
Oh, boy. Be nice to other people. We were talking about this before, and it's how I felt. I don't know if anybody ever saw that movie, Saving Private Ryan. There's a scene on the bridge when all of these folks gave up their lives to save him. And the guy says, earn this.
Yeah.
Earn this. That's what you got to do.
So many people make a sacrifice for the benefit of someone else. And sometimes those who survive have a little struggle. Why not me? Why am I living when some of my friends are not here? And that's very much a natural part of going through a crisis like this. So, you know, you're police department for a long time. And today, in the world in which we live, there's a lot of things about the police department that's unfavorable in the media. And I'm not trying to be political here, but, you know, when you see that, what do you think?
It kind of breaks my heart. There are folks in every walk of life, whether it's pastors or police officers or teachers or lawyers or politicians, pick one. Most of them do a really, really good job and try to help people, and you're going to have a few that fall short, and we try to make sure they don't stay in that profession too long. But the overwhelming majority of people really, really work hard to do right things. And, you know, police officers like to say when everybody else is running away from trouble, they run toward it. And I don't want to get political either, but when, you know, I've said this before, good policing is like air conditioning. Nobody realizes it's on and takes it for granted until it's off. And then things get really, really uncomfortable very quickly. And I think you could see that in some places. And the pendulum swings, we're both old enough to know the pendulum swings in both directions. I think it went maybe a little too far. My whole thing is I don't like to paint people with a broad brush. I don't ask people, cops don't ask people what their politics are, what their religion is, or their sexual orientation, or if they're rich or small or black or white. When they go in to save them, they're just going to save them. And I think when people stop and realize that, they would back it up a little bit with this defund policing stuff. But, you know, it's a free country. God bless. That's what I swore to do. If you feel that's the need, you're entitled to do that.
Right. You know, one of the things as we study the life of Jesus, he says this one thing: blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called sons of God. And there's a lot of police officers who are peacemakers. When those are running away, some are running toward it. And peacemakers are not just people who says, oh, shalom. The Hebrew word doesn't just mean chill out, everything's fine. But it's a proactive word that means I'm going to resolve some issues. I'm going to take some steps in resolving a conflict to bring peace into the situation. And that's what the Spirit of Christ does. And that's what we're called to do. Sometimes it's not just to say, oh, I don't create any problem, I'm a peaceful person. But sometimes we are to step up and help and encourage others and make a difference in their life. So it means making amends, restoring the damage, being peaceful. So as we finish, I want to talk about life itself. Folks, life, in my opinion, you know, I think that it's important. I think that life needs to be cherished. It needs to be valued. And when we lose people they've gone from this life to the life beyond. I think there is a life beyond. I'm not so sure I'm a guy that's going to ever stand up here and talk a lot about hell, because I'm not sure I believe in this, a God who loves us going to eternally punish us. And I can go into that another day on theological issues. But I will tell you, I strongly believe that where energy is, it doesn't just stop. I think that it lives on. I think that we're surrounded by this great crowd, this great cloud, as it says in Hebrews, of witnesses, which I think is the energy of all the life is still alive. And traditionally they call that heaven. And if that's heaven, then I'm in on that. But I think that somehow we live on, and we live on by remembering our friends. You say their name, we remember them. When you say their name, I'm just convinced you have a face in your mind. And we don't get those faces out of our minds, and they live on in our memories and also through our hearts and our lives. And somehow I'm a strong believer that life continues. So today we talk about a tragedy, but the real tragedy is when we don't celebrate life. My mother had her 95th birthday a month or so ago, and we celebrated her life. And I said, unfortunately, this is kind of like a funeral, but she's alive. We said lots of good things now. And I think it's important to say, hey, thanks for your friendship. Thanks for being who you are. And pass out those words of affirmation while we can. And don't wait until it's too late. So let me start here. Pete's been a friend of mine for a long time. I want to say publicly, I really appreciate your life. I appreciate your service. I appreciate not just what you do back in Manhattan, but the city of Sarasota. I appreciate what you do in helping people who put their trust in you, because some people, when they earn the trust, they deserve the trust. You're one of those guys, and I thank you for that. Let's give a hand for that. So let's all stand. So let's say a prayer. Father, may the peace of God, the shalom of God, be ours today. Not just a peaceful spirit, but a people who move to where damage is, and we bring healing and restoration and love and grace. May we be the church of Jesus Christ, the church of God that makes a difference in our world. Thank you for men like Pete, for men just like, and men and women like those who are sitting all among us today. Thank you for the love we share in the community we are. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. God bless. Thanks for coming today, guys.